Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something super relevant to pretty much everything we do as Baha'is. It's about Western methods and making sure we're not getting too reliant on them without thinking. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Definitely a tricky area.
Like, we all see how well certain things work in Western societies.
Right. Their systems are
Yeah.
pretty effective in a lot of ways.
But when it comes to the faith, it's not as simple as just copying and pasting.
Not at all. There are some serious warnings about this, actually, from Shoghi Effendi.
Oh, that's right. Could you remind us what he said about it?
Well, one of the big things was about the Baha'i administrative order.
Okay.
He was so clear that it's not just any old system.
Yeah.
It's divinely ordained, designed to reflect spiritual principles.
So if we just bring in methods from secular systems.
Exactly. We risk kind of losing that spiritual core.
That makes total sense.
He actually said that we can't just take bits and pieces from other systems and expect them to magically fit into the unique system revealed by Baha'u'lláh.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all situation.
No, not at all.
More like we need to tailor things,
Yeah, adapt things thoughtfully.
always grounding them in the Baha'i teachings.
Exactly.
It's about remembering what the administrative order is really for right.
That's it.
Like the writings talk about it being an instrument for the betterment of the world. So it's like a constant check-in.
Yeah.
Are our methods helping us achieve that?
Are we staying aligned with that purpose?
Or are we just defaulting to familiar approaches without really thinking?
That's where things get tricky because even things that seem harmless can lead us astray.
Ooh, like what? Give me an example.
Well, think about marketing and outreach, for instance.
Okay.
Some communities might be tempted to use corporate-style marketing
I've seen that.
to attract people to events. Big flashy campaigns targeting demographics.
You're right.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
But the source material you sent had this interesting idea about focusing more on genuine sharing,
Oh, yeah.
like sharing stories of transformation inspired by the faith, or creating spaces for genuine connection through acts of service.
I like that.
Those methods seem to resonate more deeply with the spirit of the teachings.
That's a really good point. It's not just about putting on a show.
Right?
It's about authenticity.
Exactly.
If we focus too much on presentation, we might attract people for superficial reasons. They might not actually be interested in the faith's teachings.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a subtle distinction, but a crucial one.
It's about inviting people into a genuine experience of the faith's beauty,
Yes.
not trying to sell it like it's some product.
Exactly. And this isn't just about marketing either.
Oh, right. It can show up in other ways.
Definitely.
Like even in how we manage things.
Oh, absolutely.
The source material actually talked about this too.
Yeah, it can be a real challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so help me out here.
Well, think about the typical Western business model,
Right.
with all its hierarchies and benchmarks and quotas and the constant pressure to achieve measurable results.
I mean, it gets things done.
It does, but those things can easily creep into how we run Baha'i activities if we aren't careful.
It's like we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
I love that.
The Baha'i teachings emphasize consultation,
Right.
unity-seeking divine guidance, the whole different approach.
Completely different from that top-down, results-driven mindset.
This is reminding me of something else from the source material.
What's that?
Education.
Oh, yes.
It would be so easy to just replicate standard Western educational models in our children's classes.
It's a common pitfall for sure.
But is that really what Baha'i education is all about?
That's the question, isn't it?
Like we're surrounded by these models,
All around us.
so it feels natural to adopt them. But we have to remember that Baha'i education is about so much more than just acquiring knowledge.
It's about nurturing spiritual qualities.
Right, like cooperation, service to others, detachment.
Qualities that often get overlooked in Western education systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine a children's class where competition is replaced with collaboration.
And rote memorization is replaced with meaningful discussions.
About applying spiritual principles to daily life.
Now, that's an environment that fosters true spiritual growth.
It's a whole different way of thinking.
It is.
I'm starting to see how even small things can make a big difference.
They really can.
But honestly, it's a lot to take in.
I hear you.
Do you think maybe we could do a little thought experiment to make this more concrete?
I'm all for it. Lay it on me.
Okay, so picture two Baha'i communities, both wanting to host a big outreach event
Right?
to share the teachings.
Sounds good.
The first community decides to hire a professional marketer.
Oh, okay.
Create a super flashy advertising campaign. Even offer some cool incentives to get people to come.
I can see where this is going.
I know, right?
Well,
It's well-intentioned, but it kind of prioritizes outward appearances over genuine understanding.
right. People might come out of curiosity.
Yeah, or because of the free stuff.
Exactly.
But are they really connecting with the spiritual heart of the faith?
It raises a question.
Yeah.
Are we aiming to create a space for genuine connection and exploration of the teachings?
Or are we just trying to boost attendance?
Good question.
Now imagine the second community.
Okay.
They go a different route.
Okay.
They focus on prayerful consultation, personal invitations,
Nice.
letting the beauty of the teachings speak for themselves.
So they're tapping into that principle of attraction to the Word of God.
Yes. Trusting that the teachings themselves, presented authentically, have the power to inspire.
What do you think happens?
Well, maybe the initial turnout is smaller,
Could be.
but the connections could be way deeper.
Hmm.
People who are drawn in are more likely to be genuinely interested in exploring the faith,
Interesting.
which could lead to more meaningful conversations and long-lasting relationships.
It's like a ripple effect.
So even though both communities have the same goal,
To share the teachings.
their methods lead to very different outcomes.
Powerful stuff.
This whole conversation is highlighting something super important.
What's that?
We have to be conscious of the principles guiding our actions.
Absolutely.
It's not about rejecting all innovation or adaptation,
Right.
but making sure our efforts reflect the faith's unique spiritual mission.
So well said.
All right, everyone, we're going to pause here for now, but when we come back, we'll hear what Shoghi Effendi had to say about the Baha'i community, maintaining its distinctiveness, and we'll dive into practical steps what you can take to avoid over-relying on Western methods in your own Baha'i activities. So stay tuned. So before the break, we were really getting into how important it is to make sure everything we do as Baha'is reflects the true purpose of the faith.
You know, it's spiritual purpose.
Right, like are we actually staying true to our unique character as a community?
That's a good way to put it.
Like the one that comes directly from our divine origin.
Yeah, and Shoghi Effendi really emphasized that.
Is he?
He said, and this is a quote, "The faith of Baha'u'lláh cannot afford to compromise or to whittle down the truths it stands for, nor bow to the exigencies of public opinion or cater to the prevailing fashions of the day."
Whoa, that's powerful stuff.
It is.
So it's not about just blending in with the world around us
No, not at all.
or watering down our message to make it more palatable.
We're called to be different.
Yeah, like a beacon of something better.
And that difference comes from the spiritual principle.
The ones that can actually change the world.
And the best part is we have actual guidance on how to do that.
Oh, yeah, how to avoid falling into the trap of relying too much on Western ways of doing things.
Tell me more.
So what kind of guidance did the source offer?
Well, the first thing is something we should all be doing anyway.
What's that?
Immersing ourselves in the Baha'i writings.
Ah, that makes sense.
It's like going back to the source.
Yeah.
That's where we find those unique principles. The ones that should be shaping everything we do.
Like consultation and unity.
Right. Spiritual education.
Those principles are so different from how things are usually done in the secular world.
They provide a whole different framework.
So it's like we're constantly checking our internal compass.
Yeah. Making sure we're navigating with a Baha'i worldview.
And not just following whatever happens to be trendy at the moment.
I like that.
Another thing the source emphasized
Yeah.
is prayer and relying on divine guidance.
That's essential, isn't it?
Like Baha'u'lláh says, "Let reliance on the ever-loving God be thy trust, and not upon the sullen, ever-discontented self."
Beautiful quote.
It reminds us to let go of our ego.
Yeah, and align ourselves with a higher purpose.
If we come to our service with that spirit of humility and reliance on a higher power,
It just makes sense.
that our actions will be more likely to reflect his purpose.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And you know what goes hand in hand with that?
What?
Fostering a spirit of service. When our actions are motivated by love for humanity, a genuine desire to contribute to a better world.
We're naturally going to be drawn to approaches that reflect the faith's values.
It's like instead of asking, what's the most efficient way to get this done?
We should be asking.
How can I serve others in a way that embodies Baha'i principles?
It shifts our whole focus.
Oh, and another thing,
Tell me.
the importance of prioritizing content over presentation.
Right. It's not that being professional or aesthetically pleasing is bad,
No.
but those things should never overshadow the substance of the faith's message.
It's like you could have a beautiful website or a perfectly organized event, but if the core spiritual teachings aren't there,
It's all for nothing.
it's about striking that balance.
Form and function.
To illustrate this point, the source brought up this fascinating historical example
Oh, yeah.
from the early days of the faith in the West.
I remember reading that. It was so interesting.
So some of the early believers who had come from a Christian background tried to apply methods they were familiar with,
Like what?
organizing these competitive teaching campaigns
Oh, wow.
or structuring things based on denominations.
So they were trying to fit the Bahá'í Faith into these existing religious frameworks.
It makes sense in a way,
They were drawing on what they knew.
but it didn't quite work, did it?
Not really. And Shoghi Effendi actually stepped in to clarify things.
What did he say?
He basically said, we need to rely on Baha'i principles and consultation, not just copy what other religions are doing.
It's about recognizing our own unique strengths.
And the spiritual tools we have.
That reminds me of the 19-day feast.
Oh, yeah.
It has administrative and social elements,
For sure.
but ultimately it's a spiritual gathering.
Absolutely.
If we turned it into a purely business meeting,
We'd miss the whole point.
that's such a good analogy.
It shows how even seemingly ordinary activities
Can have a profound spiritual dimension.
when we approach them with the right intention.
Yeah, and that leads to the final part of this episode.
I like it. Stay tuned, folks.
Welcome back, everyone. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dives, and it's been super insightful.
Definitely.
But before we wrap things up, I really want to give our listeners some practical tools.
Yeah, totally. We've explored all these principles and examples,
right.
but how can people actually apply this in their own lives?
Exactly, and in their service to the faith.
So what do we have for them?
All right, so I came up with 3 guiding questions.
Ooh, I love a good framework. Lay it on me.
Okay, so anytime you're considering a new approach or trying to decide how to do something, just ask yourself these questions.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right, the first one, and this is a biggie,
Okay.
does this approach align with Baha'i principles?
Ah, the foundation.
Right. Are we reflecting consultation, unity, justice?
The equality of men and women.
All those core teachings.
So important.
If the method clashes with our principles, then we need to pause.
Reevaluate.
Exactly.
Yay, makes sense.
All right, question number 2.
Okay.
Does this method reflect the spiritual nature of the faith?
Getting to the heart of it.
Are we focused on transformation of hearts?
The development of spiritual qualities.
Connection to Baha'u'llah's teachings?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we getting sidetracked by more worldly ideas of success?
It's about keeping our priorities straight.
Exactly.
Like we were saying earlier about content over presentation. Is this approach really serving the spiritual aims of the faith?
Or is it just a fancy facade?
Good question.
And last but not least,
Hit them with it.
question number 3, does this method strengthen unity and community building efforts?
Bringing it back to the community.
Is it bringing people together?
In a spirit of love?
Collaboration? Or is it creating division, hierarchy, unhealthy competition?
We got to watch out for those pitfalls.
For sure.
Because unity is at the heart of it all.
Exactly.
The Baha'i community is all about fostering oneness.
So our methods should always reflect that.
I love it. So to recap,
Does it align with Baha'i principles?
does it reflect the spiritual nature of the faith?
Does it strengthen unity?
If you can answer yes to those 3 questions,
You're golden.
those are some seriously helpful takeaways
I hope so.
by asking ourselves these questions,
We can make sure our actions are not just effective.
but also spiritually coherent
It's about finding that balance.
between action and reflection.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a powerful quote from Shoghi Effendi. He said, "The forces of a decadent materialism must be challenged and met by a force that is born of the Spirit, nurtured by the will of God, and sustained by the light of unfailing guidance."
Wow, that's a potent reminder,
It really highlights where our true strength comes from,
not from blindly following the ways of the world,
but from our connection to something higher.
something divine.
So friends, as you go forth and serve the cause, let those words be your guide.
Rely on the power of spiritual principles.
Consult your heart.
Consult your community.
Consult the Baha'i writings.
And remember that you have a unique and vital role to play.
In building a better world.
A world illuminated by the light of Baha'u'llah's teachings.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Keep seeking.
Keep learning.
And keep striving to build a world worthy of his love. I have a long